Much of Marxism is in direct opposition to the functionist view, as you would expect. However, there are similarities between the functionist view and the Marxist view, which we will be looking at in the next lesson. So to start off with, let's have a look at a quote from Karl Marx himself, which pretty much sums up the Marxist view of religion. Religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress and the protest against real distress. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation. It is the opium of the people. The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is required for their real happiness. The demand to give up the illusion about its condition is the demand to give up a condition which needs illusions. So religion is like a drug. That is why it is compared to opium, which is basically heroin. It numbs the pain of oppression, but it doesn't really fix the problems. Religion is an illusion. So religion dulls the pain of the oppression for the working class. It makes life bearable, so people do not rise up against the system. It gives people hope. It stupefies its followers, but it does not bring true happiness. So Karl Marx argues the working class are alienated from the process of production. The working classes are unhappy because they miss what is fundamental to human society, and that is producing. Karl Marx argued that people would gain real fulfillment from producing, and that was a natural thing for all people. However, in capitalism, the process of production is split up into specialist tasks. And so by participating in a small task, the working class never see the fruits of their labour. They never feel fulfilled. And this alienation from production is an experience which makes the working class severely unhappy. So they turn to religion for consolation, to make themselves better. Religion gives people a sense of hope, but it's a sense of false hope. So the opium masks the pain. Just as heroin numbs the user, religion numbs the pain for the working class. But it doesn't offer any solution to the earthly misery that the working class feel. So how does religion manage to dull oppression, and how does it numb the pain? Well, there's several ways in which it does that. It promises an eternal life. So if the working class accept their lives on earth and they accept their oppression and they don't question it, they're a good worker. They'll be rewarded in heaven. Obviously, this is illusory happiness. Secondly, religion offers rewards to those who suffer. This is obviously quite similar to promising an eternal life, because the reward is that they will get compensated in heaven for any oppression that they've experienced in this life. Religion also offers the intervention of God to help solve problems. So the hope is always there that God will step in and help the working class. And finally, it justifies the social order and a person's position within it. And so the ruling class use religion to justify the hierarchy. This can be seen in an example from the past, the divine right of the kings, where it was God's will that the king ruled. Whilst this is fairly outdated, the ruling class could justify their position with the idea of it's God's will. So this could be applied to later society. So we have looked at how religion is used as an opium or an opiate. But Marx argued religion is also a means of social control. Firstly, it legitimizes the class system and keeps people in the place. After all, people must be higher because that is what God intended. This can be summed up nicely in the hymn All Things Bright and Beautiful. The rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate, God made them high and lowly and ordered their estate. Interestingly, that no longer appears in modern hymns. Religion ensures the working class are kept in a state of false class consciousness. They never realise that they are being exploited because of the ideologies that religion enforces. Therefore, religion successfully prevents a working class revolution. Religion also diverts attention from the real source of oppression by disguising the true nature of exploitation. This is because religion explains social inequalities in supernatural terms. The real causes, which is the exploitation by the ruling class, are obscured and distorted by religion's insistence that inequality is a product of sin or a sign that people have been chosen by God. So far, the Marxist view has merely looked at how the working class use religion and the effects religion has on the working class. But what about the ruling class? Well, Marx argues that the ruling class merely adopt the beliefs in order to justify their position and to transmit ruling class ideology. Lenin, as you probably know, is a well-known Russian leader who was partly responsible for starting the revolutions in the early 1900s. His theory of religion is very similar to that of Karl Marx, because unlike Karl Marx, Lenin was a Marxist. So Lenin called religion a spiritual gin rather than an opium. He argued that religion was an intoxicant which was doled out to the masses to confuse them. The ruling class used religion to manipulate the masses and stop the overthrow of capitalism by creating a mystical fog which obscures reality. There are some subtle differences between Lenin and Marx, because what Lenin is referring to here as the ruling class ideology being a mystical fog, whereas opium is the idea that religion gives you false happiness. So there are many criticisms of the Marxist view, and these are just some of them. So we could argue that Marxism is actually a religion itself, because there is a promise of salvation if Marxist ideas are followed, and that salvation is the communist utopia. Marxists are also criticised by neo-Marxists, that is, sociologists who try and update Marxist theory to make it more relevant to society today. And they argue that actually religion can promote change, and some religions are actually revolutionary. Many religious leaders have used religion to try and promote peace and change. And religion also encourages the rich to help the poor. Neo-Marxism doesn't completely disagree with Marxism. After all, neo-Marxism stems from Marxist thought. Neo-Marxist just tries to put Marxist thought into a more contemporary situation. Clearly, Marx was an excellent philosopher, but he died in 1883, and as such, we would not be able to expect him to predict the future. So, Ernst Bloch and Maduro argue that religion has a dual character. It can inhibit change, that means it can prevent change, so it can stop revolutions. But on the other hand, it can also inspire protest and rebellion. In fact, we could even sum up Jesus, as Jesus was a true Marxist revolutionary. And that's where the neo-Marxists argue religion can be a force for change, it can be a force for revolution. Religious beliefs, therefore, can create a vision of a better world, and as such, can help bring about social change. So the problem with Marxism is that Marxism is economically deterministic. That is, everything stems from the economy. And Ernst Bloch argues that religion can have some independence from the economy. Religion is not a conservative force. It doesn't always maintain the existing hierarchy. It can be revolutionary and bring about social change. So Maduro uses liberation theology to explain his view. The Catholic Church has, in the past, supported private enterprise, and the Catholic Church has been criticised in the past for being corrupt and for being, too rich. However, Maduro argues that Catholic priests have also criticised and acted against ruling class interests, and he uses the example of Nicaragua. So in Nicaragua, which is in South America in the 1960s, various radical groups emerged from the church in South America. Somoza was the Nicaraguan dictator at the time, and even the Catholic Church openly supported the revolutionary effort, and many priests actually joined in the armed struggle against Somoza and his army. This actually led to the overthrow and assassination of the dictator. So what led to the emergence of liberation theology? At the time in Nicaragua, there was deepening rural poverty and there was urban slums. There were many human rights abuses such as false imprisonment, torture and death squads and murdering of political opponents. And this led to a growing commitment among the Catholic priests to an ideology that supported the poor. So next lesson, we'll be making comparisons between the functionalist and Marxist view, and we'll also be looking at some of the criticisms. We will examine in more detail some of the evidence that supports the Marxist view.